This is the Pimax Crystal Super Ultra Wide, and this is the new full fidelity MiG-29A Fulcrum from Eagle Dynamics, and I'll be trying them both out for the very first time today. Now this is the 50 ppd version, and thanks to Pimax, this is the version they've been letting me test out for a few months now. It is identical in hardware and specs to the Ultra Wide, with 50 pixels per degree, a max refresh rate of 90 Hz, and 3840 by 3840 resolution per eye. Now when you overlap the left and the right eye, you get about 105 degrees for both eyes, and then about 10 degrees on each side, which is not overlapping, giving you a total FOV of about 127. The stereo overlaps what gives you that realistic feeling in VR. Now the Ultra Wide is going to sacrifice some of your binocular overlap, pushing the panels further apart, giving you a larger visible field of view of 140, bringing down the overlap to 90 degrees for both eyes. And if you watch my first review of the Pimax Super, which was the 50 ppd version, I can attest that those numbers are correct, as those are pretty much the same numbers that I got. For the Ultra Wide version, I wanted to put the headset on and give you my live very first impressions, as well as my first impressions of the MiG-29, as I will be flying it also for the very first time. So whether good or bad, I'm hitting record and showing you my very first reactions. Now getting the headset connected, pardon the pun, but it was super easy. The firmware updated quickly, and even getting the controllers paired to the new headset was super fast and easy. And did you just see how smooth that hand animation was? I'm blown away by the detail in the cockpit, but it's the helmet that immediately gets my attention. You can't see it in the recording, but the top bits of the helmet that hang down, I can see in my peripheral vision, making my VR headset feel like a real fighter pilot helmet. It really adds to the immersion, and I'm not even sure if you can see it in Track IR, but that's an F-14 Tomcat flown by a very good pilot from my Discord. So if I can stay alive my very first round, it's not going to be because of my skill, it'll be because of the performance of the MiG-29. In my immediate impression of the Ultra Wide, the FOV is good, as I'm easily able to track the other player through the merge, and the AOA capability of this MiG-29 also feels good, although I don't know how to lock. But so far the FOV of the Ultra Wide doesn't feel that much bigger than the 50 ppd version, which I already love. So just a reminder, I'm getting about 124 degrees FOV on my 50 ppd version, which is par for what it's pretty much supposed to be getting, which is 127. Now the 50 ppd version also has a lab mode, which can push the panels further apart, pretty much doing the same thing that the Ultra Wide does by sacrificing some of your binocular overlap, and I got about 134 degrees out of the 140, which is pretty good at an extra 10 degrees, but in that lab mode it did strain my eyes almost immediately, so I didn't think it was worth just the extra 10 degrees. So I was very surprised as soon as I put on this headset, I didn't feel any of that eye strain initially. And I am a huge FOV fan, having the 8KX being my favorite headset for so long, and the Pimax Super is currently my favorite headset because it has the biggest FOV. So I'm willing to get a little bit of eye strain if I can get that FOV closer to what I used to have, as long as it's manageable. But honestly, in this Ultra Wide that I'm using currently, I don't feel like I'm seeing 140 degrees. It feels to me very similar to what I've already been using. But right after this round, I am excited to test out the FOV in a Steam application, so I can get some real numbers on what the FOV is for me instead of going by feeling. Because right now it does feel almost the same, but maybe it's slightly bigger. But getting back to the MiG-29 in this dogfight, this is literally my first round ever in this MiG-29, so I am struggling a bit. It looks like I am fast, as I don't know the rate speed. So my plan for now is to stay up here right around the circle, since he's all the way down there, maybe bleed some of the speed off. And I'm going to try to outrate him, even though I'm just going by feeling. I'm also struggling with the first and second detent, as when you're in a combat mode, for some reason your speed on the HUD disappears and you have to pull first detent to bring your speed up. Who thought it'd be a good idea when you don't have a lock to remove the speed and the altitude information off the HUD? And it's not to declutter the HUD because it comes back when you get a lock. But look at this really cool animation detail. This aircraft is so beautiful and cool. I'm actually enjoying the struggle, but I am one of those weirdos that finds enjoyment at a keybinding new aircraft. In fact, I stayed up late last night thinking about a better location for the first and second detent, and sometimes I'm like that where I can't go to sleep at night because I'm thinking about the best location on my HOTAS for keybinds. And I think I found a better setup for the first and second detent. Instead of having to pull through the first and second detent on the trigger to fire the gun, I move the first trigger detent to my pinky button, not the paddle but the button. On the Viper, I believe it's called the FOV expand button. I like having a hair trigger, and I don't like having to pull through 2 detents to fire my gun, so I actually do this on a lot of my aircraft. And I actually learned a lot from this very first round. I was trying to lock by just tapping the button. As you can see, I'm just hip firing here. But after this round, I realized I actually have to hold the lock until it locks. Now, getting back to the ultrawide headset, even though it's the same hardware, basically the same headset, I feel like my 50 ppd version has less optical distortion. I'm seeing less color fringing, less glare, and even less what I like to call screen door effect. And I'm not sure that's the right terminology because there is a ton of resolution here. There is something when you look at the water, it looks like you're looking through a screen door or lace fabric or something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but in my opinion, it's more noticeable in the ultrawide than it is in the 50 ppd version. And at the moment, I'm loving the rudder authority of this MiG-29. Even though I'm struggling with the radar and don't know how to lock very well, I'm loving its maneuverability. And I'm also loving the FOV of the Pimax Super. Even though it doesn't feel like 140, I'm still getting a wide enough FOV where I can track the hostile throughout the entirety of the fight without having to do gymnastics in my chair or strain my neck. I mean, I know some of you guys have them chicken necks where you can turn your head around without any problem, but I am not blessed with that talent. So I need all the FOV help I can get. I also need help with my radar and IRST modes as I finally land a shot, but it was without a lock. And with the helmet, you can get a lock up to 60 degrees off your nose. If you look past 60, the rings will disappear. But at the time I was just tapping the lock, I wasn't holding it, so I couldn't get a lock anyway. But after this session, I learned the weapon systems a little more, and even though they may be a little bit harder at first to learn, it feels that much more rewarding when you do have success. And I find the difficulty to also be kind of fun, even though I am struggling at the moment to get the lock. I was impressed how well the MiG-29 slots in behind the F-14 Tomcat, and even though the Tomcat goes up and I'm a little bit slow, I feel like I was still able to power through the climb. I don't know how powerful these engines are, but they did feel pretty strong to me. I switched to close combat mode and I am still fumbling with the systems, but I'm happy with the progress that we've made in just one round. And the takeaway I have is that the MiG-29 falls somewhere in between the Viper and the Tomcat. Now, switching gears back to the ultrawide, I finally recorded a loss of head tracking, and the recording even captured me shaking my head back and forth, which did bring the tracking back. And what started out to be frustrating ended up being a blessing in disguise, as I was determined to figure out why this was happening, and I'm 99% sure I know the answer. It's not the lighting or your environment. The simple answer is my DCS settings are too high. And you can't just go by the FPS counter because I was getting a solid 72 frames, but I found the best way to really test it is to lean forward as close to the HUD as you can and then quickly lean side to side. And if you get any kind of what I call jitters or stutters, then you need to lower your settings. So I'm currently out of fuel, but this was the turning point in my Pimax experience, because once I got the settings dialed in and my head tracking was silky smooth, I no longer needed to use the foveated rendering, which seemed to also reduce the Mura. And honestly, I was starting to find the foveated rendering to be a little distracting, and to me it just looks so much better without it. And by turning off the eye tracking, I was able to save even more CPU power, and we all know that DCS is heavy on the CPU, so I am so ecstatic right now for the Pimax Super. I've been really worried about this loss of tracking, and now that my worries of that are completely gone, I can 100% recommend this headset now. It looks good in every category, and it has the biggest FOV, and that to me is what matters. So this is one of my favorite things to do in the VR headsets is test the FOV. And from here, I'll be recording live from the Pimax microphone. First impressions, just looking through the headset. It's hard to tell how much wider this is from the 50 ppd, but first impressions, I can't really tell if it's wider than the 50 ppd version. When I move my head, like on the straight lines over here, it does seem to kind of warp a little. Yeah, it's kind of like this on the straight lines. It's not bad though. It's just a little bit of like, I don't know what you call that, barrel distortion. It doesn't feel bad so far on my eyes, actually. So let's just jump into the FOV machine, and after I do the ultrawide, I will jump into the 50 ppd version. Alright, the one on the right's disappeared. I can still see the one on the left. And I think I'm getting 124. Maybe the headset's not on straight, but I'm getting 124. Let me maybe make a little adjustment on the headset. All right, let's retest. Yeah, for some reason, the one on the right is disappearing first. So I'm gonna jump in here. I have studio form cushions, and that may affect my FOV slightly. And it also could be that I need to push the headset slightly left to right, because maybe I might not be centered, and that's probably my fault. I'm gonna say 124. I think that's the same FOV I got with the 50 ppd version. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Let's go in here. Yeah, I think 100. I'm pretty confident. What in the world? These are the exact numbers I had with the 50 ppd version. I'm gonna go ahead and switch headsets. Actually, let me double check. This headset does say ultra wide in the software, so I'm pretty sure this is the ultra wide. Kind of confused. Let me switch to the 50 ppd version and retest this. All right, we are in the 50 ppd version, and I can already tell you this feels better on my eyes. The other version wasn't bad, but this is more, I would say, relaxing. The mask feels, or it seems to be the same opening, if that makes sense. And I don't see the fringing like I did on the other one. That's weird. Let's look at like how I move my head. I feel like, well, there's a little bit still. There's still a little bit. And I think that's maybe with all Pimax headsets. But it doesn't seem to be as bad as the other one, or as much. You know, where the straight line kind of does this. Well, for one, this FOV tester game, it doesn't feel the smoothest to begin with. But I do feel like this feels smoother. All right, let's retest and see if I did something right or wrong here. See, I'm seeing these more centered. Like I'm still seeing the right side. I feel like my vision's more like... Whoa, are you kidding me? I'm almost... Alright. I swear I'm getting a bigger FOV. Alright, right here I can see it. Right here it disappears. So I'm gonna say right here 24. I swear I can see, I think this is bigger. Like on the other headset, the right line was completely gone. The right red line was completely gone. On this one, I can still see the red line here. So I feel like my vision is more centered on this one. And right there, it disappears. So I'm gonna say 124, but I believe this is a better 124. So this is exactly what I got when I first tested this headset. So I am super confused. Pun intended. Uh-oh. Dude, okay. Oh my goodness, what is happening? I'm getting a bigger FOV on my vertical? Alright, so the top line has disappeared, okay? I can still see the bottom. Alright, so the top one's gone, so I guess we would call this 100. Even though I can still see the bottom one? Dude, I can see the bottom one right here at 110. So I'm getting a bigger... That's so weird that I'm getting more on the bottom. I'm going to say 100, just to be fair, because that's where the top disappears. Even though I'm getting almost 110 on the bottom part. That is so odd. Alright, so far our first impressions, the 50 ppd version, maybe mine is glitched or something, but I'm getting more FOV from my 50 ppd version. I would say they're almost exactly the same, but this feels better. This one is better, I think. So guys, if you want the biggest FOV for your flight sim, you gotta go with the Pimax Super, and I think the 50 ppd version is the clear winner. I don't think the Ultrawide is ready. I don't know if it was a misstep from the factory, but I'm not getting that 140 that they claim, and the profile doesn't seem as good as the 50 ppd version. But I am super happy right now with my 50 ppd version, and I've said this before, if I had a wish list of what I wanted in a headset, this headset checks more of those boxes. QLED panels giving it great brightness and colors, the biggest resolution, DisplayPort connection, good binocular overlap, and the #1 reason, it's got the biggest FOV that you can get right now. So Pimax is running a special offer for my European audience only, running for 1 week. Use code SRE2025 for a 10% discount on the Pimax Super or Crystal Light. I'll have the links in the description and the comment section. And if you do decide to get a Pimax, please use the links below because it really helps out the channel. They'll also be at the European Sim Racing Expo on the 17th. Again, check the links below to get more details.